This is Pete Dutton from OldCarMemories.com. I've gotten a lot of questions over the years about dealer promos. Now you may be asking, what is a dealer promo? Well, this video is going to go over exactly what a dealer promo is, what significance they have on the collector car market, and the different types of dealer promos. In essence, what you will learn in this video is pretty much the A, B's, and C's about dealer promos. Now, dealer promos is, and if you take the term, it's a shortening of dealer promotionals. And what they were is you have a scale car, which is a model car that's made out of plastic, which was offered by dealerships, and this is car dealerships, back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. What they gave you when they gave you one of these scale model cars was, in essence, a exact copy of what was available on the dealership lot. So in other words, this vehicle right here is a 1970 GTO promo. And this was what you would have found if you had gone to a Pontiac dealership back in for the 1970 model year. You would have found this 1970 GTO on the lot, and of course they would have given you a promo. Now back then, Pontiac offered multiple colors for a 70 GTO in terms of a promo. And what these cars were is they were ways in which a dealership could introduce you to a brand new model that was available for that model year. Generally, unlike today, we've gotten used to where we know what a new car is going to look like well in advance before the cars hit the dealership lots. Back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, that was not the case. What you had back in that era is you had automobiles that would be released in September or October of a given calendar year. For instance, maybe you had in 1964, you would have in September of October, you would have the 1965 model year cars being released. And we have the same thing right now in the modern era, where most of the new cars arrive at the car dealerships for the upcoming model year in September and October. But back then, you really didn't have any pictures, or there wasn't really the internet to show you what the cars were going to be. So it was kind of like a big event for individuals to go down to dealerships and actually look at the new cars right as they were being released. Well, during that time frame, it became kind of a popular type of popular type of activity for families or individuals to go down to the dealership and pick up dealer promos of the brand new cars that were for that given model year. So in other words, as an example, the 1970 GTO right here, someone would go down in September or October of 1969, and they would pick up one of these dealer promos. And this was a way in which the dealer could introduce the new styling to a previous customer or a prospective customer, and it was something that the individual or the family would take home, and they would, display it on a shelf or put it on a desk, and they would give it to their children to play with. And it was a way in which they would look at the car and they would say, "Hey, wait a minute, this is kind of a nice looking car. I really like this." And in some cases, people would come back to the dealership and say, "I've got this, in this case, it's a 70 GTO promo, and it's in this beautiful red." In this case, this red was Cardinal Red, which was one of the available colors for a 1970 GTO. They would go back to the dealership, and the salesman would say, "Hey, no problem. We can order you a Cardinal Red GTO exactly like your promo. And that's why the promos during this era were always, for the most part, the colors that they had were the same exact colors that were available on that given year for those particular cars, and because they were essentially wanted to advertise the colors that were available. With the 70 GTO, this is a very, very interesting piece. This was a contest car. They essentially, this was the most common 1970 GTO promo that you were going to find. They have them in multiple other colors, but the contest car was the only GTO promo that didn't have, you'll see right here, there was normally a hood tachometer that was essentially an external to the cabin, and it was put right there on the hood. And it was one of the items that Pontiacs were well known for, especially the high performance Pontiacs in the late 60s and early 70s, was the hood tack. And this does not have the hood tack, but there's a cardinal red version of this that has a hood tack. That promo's worth more money. And then, of course, the other colors from 1970, they had the hood tack. This promo is just a really nice piece, as I mentioned. It's got, fantastic chrome, no scratches, just in perfect, absolutely perfect condition. It's, it's definitely very nicely detailed, and that's what promos were all about. They were about offering a fantastically detailed, for its era, vehicle. A representation of the vehicle that they were trying to promote. So by having this, as I said, it was a way in which they could sort of entice somebody to come and buy the real thing. And this, as I mentioned, doesn't have any scratches. It's has fine detail, and this is just a perfect example of a mint condition 1970 GTO. And of course, as a representation of promos in general, promos all had rolling wheels. And this was, as I mentioned, that some individuals or families that would pick these up would give them to children who would play with them. And of course, unfortunately, the ones that were played with by children, they generally didn't last. They kind of got beaten up. And, some of the examples, if you do find them, they'll tend to have pillars right here. The windshield pillars will be broken, or they'll be missing. Generally, the glass will be broken, and of course, the body will be in scratched up and pretty rough shape. But with these promos, you generally didn't have any detail of any engine. Everything was just kind of an external shell. These were based on the model kit cars that came in cardboard boxes. And those kit cars, they had things like finely detailed engines and, exhaust pipes, and you would flip them over and they would have a little bit more detail. The detail's not bad here, but this is not to the detail where they're separate parts. Everything's kind of molded together for the most part on a promo. But they are still nicely detailed, as I said. And generally, too, is you're not going to have like you had on the model cars, especially as you got to the late 70s and then into the 80s, where you could actually stick your finger through the cabin and then turn the steering wheel, and the front wheels would move on a model car. You had some model cars that were that sophisticated. You didn't have that with a promo. The wheels were stationary and they didn't turn. But, they had the detail. And also the detail also included inside the interior of the car were the seats and the whole interior. And in this case, it's got a beautiful center console. It has a wonderful, steering wheel. And just really, it gave you a good representation of the car that was on the dealer's lot. And this GTO is... was a really neat car, and it was kind of a futuristic car back in the era, in that era where it had an Endura front end, and so it was something that was kind of flashy. So when you had a promo did a fantastic job of of sort of really kind of selling what was already really a nice vehicle. And I'll put this back in its parking spot over here, and I'll show you kind of another iteration of a promo from the same era. And actually, this is another Pontiac. This is a Pontiac Bonneville. And what you'll notice with the Bonneville, these were big cars. I mean, you could tell from the model that this is just a really wonderful, large, full-size vehicle. This is something that you aren't going to find on a dealership lot. This is, about the size of a Chevrolet, what you would find of the Chevrolet Suburban, which is a massive SUV. This is as long as a Chevrolet Suburban. This type of vehicle had a trunk. They had massive trunks. They had fantastic cabin space. You could fit 6 adults comfortably in a vehicle like this, where you had 3 people in the back seat, 3 people in the front. And, they were so wide that normal size adults, they didn't even touch shoulders when they were sitting all in the same row. This was seating that was actually more spacious than what you find on a current commercial airliner and coach. They were just fantastic vehicles, and just kind of really an error, unfortunately, that we'll probably never see again. But these cars were what the epitome of what a middle-class America could afford. This is what middle-class America wanted. Gasoline was still cheap during this era. This type of car you could easily fit a family in. You could put, literally just so much luggage in here. You could actually even put a surfboard in the trunk of something like this, where the surfboard would be diagonal and you could close it down. It was that big. Of course, it wouldn't be a longboard, but a standard 6'2" surfboard will slide right in there and fit. It's just a really, really, it's reminiscent of a bygone era. But this Bonneville is just a great model, and it's a great promo, and it has nice chrome, and it's in fantastic shape. But the reason why I wanted to showcase this promo is because of this right here. You probably have noticed that it's got this very interesting, it's got an interesting slit in the back part of the trunk. Now what this is a lot of people over the years have come up with all sorts of off-the-wall reasons of why in this 1970 promo there was a slit here. Some people came up with some off-the-wall excuses or reasoning that it was used by car salesmen to put on their desk so they could put business cards in here. Unfortunately, that does sound like a neat idea, but that definitely is all bogus, because this is not wide enough to fit a business card, at least a standard business card. What this really was, it was a piggy bank. And this was mostly geared towards probably children, where they could put their quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies, and put them into this slot. And then, of course, when they wanted to get them out, after they've been there for a while, they could then, of course, remove the screws here. There are 4 of them, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top. And once they've removed the screws, then, of course, they could get their money out. And, of course, Pontiac was probably hoping that prospective buyers would put all their quarters and all their nickels and dimes in there to save up for a 1970 Bonneville. But more than likely, that wasn't the case, probably. You'd be saving for a long time, and I don't think it would fit enough change to, even back when cars were a lot less expensive back then, still you would be hard-pressed to fit enough quarters and dimes and nickels in here to afford to pay for a 70 Bonneville. But yeah, this is a very nice piece, and this is something that you don't see come by too often. And I'll put this one also back in its parking spot, and we'll move on to the next promo from this era. And with promos, back by the 1970s, what started to occur was you had dealerships realizing, and of course especially the manufacturers realizing, because they were paying MPC and other manufacturers to make these promos for them, they were finding out that they really weren't getting much of a return on their investment in the promos. The promos were becoming a little bit more expensive to make, and they started to realize that it really wasn't yielding the sales that they quite expected. So by about the mid-70s, a lot of the promos were starting to really disappear very quickly. And this is one of the promos, because one of the promos that was very popular back in the era were the late 60s and early 70s Firebirds were very popular, especially among Pontiac folks. So were of course the GTOs are very popular too, but the Firebirds are very popular. I mean, this was the car that Pontiac was kind of promoting as its future car. It was sporty. It was a 2+2 sport coupe, and it was exactly the epitome of what Pontiac tried to present in terms of an image of high performance. And it was just they offered fantastic fast motors, and it was they were very nice pieces. The problem was this was the last year of the promos that were assembled. This is a 1974 Firebird Formula. And the Formula wasn't the top-end performance vehicle in the Firebird lineup. It was actually the Trans Am that was. But believe it or not, this was the one they made the promo of in the early to mid-70s, was the Formula. And this piece is just a nice rendition where it's got the black bumper, nice detail, fantastic rally two wheels. One of the things that you will notice with if you're really into Pontiacs, or if you ever go to car shows, you'll really see that late 60s and 1970s performance oriented Pontiacs by and large have these rally two wheels. So that's why most of the promos all had the rally two wheels, because that's what the performance buyers wanted. These were steel wheels that were just fantastic looking. They were sporty looking, and anyone who's familiar with the Rockford Files, which of course hit the airwaves back in 1974 in TV land. This was what the Rockford Firebird was based on. It was, believe it or not, it was based on a Formula. A lot of people think it was a Pontiac Esprit. The Pontiac Esprit was what they tried to show the car as being, but what they did was, because they wanted the car to be more performance oriented, they ordered the car they ordered the car as a Formula. Then they removed the hood and replaced it with a flat hood, and then they badged it as an Esprit. But Jim Rockford's Firebird was definitely an Esprit, only in essentially in name only. It really was a Formula, because the Formula had a better handling suspension. And so that's what's really nice. And of course, Jim Rockford's car had the Rally 2s, and it was gold. It was just beautiful. And they had different versions of his car, anything from the 1974 from all the way up to 78 were the vehicles that he had. And actually, believe it or not, in some of the the stunts, they even had a 73 that popped in early on in the series just for stunts. But yeah, this is really just a nice piece, and this was kind of the last of the era of the Firebirds. And as I mentioned, the next year in 70, since it was the last year for the assembled one, in 75, Pontiac still offered the Formula to prospective buyers, but what they did was they put it in a model box. And of course, it was up to the prospective buyer to assemble the vehicle and then assemble it before they displayed it. And then they did that for a few years up until about 1980, and then that was the end of that. So this was a good representation, great detail, and just something that if you're a Firebird fan, this is something that you probably would like in your collection. Now we'll go and kind of change gears a little bit and show you another car from this era, which is a very interesting piece. This was a 1972 Chevrolet Impala. Now, you have to really understand how popular Chevrolet was back in 1972, and this would also include the 60s and the 70s. Chevrolet was top banana. I mean, nobody generally sold more cars than Chevrolet. There were a few years here and there where Ford might have sold a few more, but by and large, Chevrolet was the top banana, and this is just a representation of what Chevrolet offered. Chevrolet offered so many different types of iterations on cars and performance cars, family-oriented cars, large cars, sporty cars. And with this Impala, this is, a full-size car, just like the 70 Bonneville. But this was a different take on a full-size car. I mean, even back in 1972, performance was kind of waning. The insurance companies had gotten involved in heavily insuring high-performance cars, which were called muscle cars. But yet the automakers, especially Chevrolet, still wanted to offer a sporty package. If you were a family man and needed to buy a family car, but you wanted something that was a little sporty, that's what this came in. This was just phenomenal. And just to kind of show you, right over here, you'll see there's a concave rear window. And that was it was optional on the Impala. And what that gave you is it just gave you a just beautifully sculpted rear window and kind of had this really futuristic kind of sporty look to it. And this was the two-door model, and that's where this rear window was optional on the two-door model. And you could get some high performance motors still in this. With the Impala, you could get up to a 455 cubic inch big block V8, and you had a whole host of other V8s available. In this case, they put on the promo a 400 right up here and towards the front, and the 400 denoted, which is kind of interesting. It denoted there was a small block 400 available in 1972, which had a two-barrel carburetor, and that's based on the same engine family as the other small block Chevy motors, including the 350 and the 305 and the 327, and then just a whole host of small block motors. And the 400 was the largest displacement of those, and that was available that year. And also the 400 also denoted the 402, which was a big block version it was a big block version of the 400, but they called it the 400, but it was really a 402. And the 402 was in essence a slightly bored out version of the legendary 396. By 1972, you had the low compression motors, which had been introduced in 71 on all GM cars, but yet still performance could be found. But this is just a fantastic, you can look at the detail. It's just really got a nice chrome on it and no scratches. And you look at the back and it's, it's got dual exhaust on it, which was available on the Impala. And just a really, really nice piece. But this one, what makes it so special is there was a special event, and it was a special drive, which Chevrolet had back around 1972, and it was called the 100 Great Days. And it was a special event where for 100 days, they promoted the sales of Chevrolet vehicles by offering, special, it was a special promotional to sell Chevrolet vehicles, but they actually sold 1 million Chevrolets during that period of 100 days. And here is what the sticker says on it. It says, "Thanks a million for your contribution to our 1 million car and truck sales during the 100 Great Days with Chevrolet campaign." And it's signed by Robert D. Lund, who was a general sales manager at the time of Chevrolet. Now, look at it this way. I mean, we're talking, this is a million cars and trucks that were sold in a period just slightly over 3 months. And that is phenomenal. I mean, that really just shows you how popular Chevrolet was back in the day. I mean, people now look at, you have the Toyota Camry and the Honda Accord, that they were the best-selling cars. Back in the day, it was these full-size Chevys that were they were the Honda Accords. If you combine the Honda Accord and the Toyota Camry today in terms of sales, that's what you had with the Chevrolet, with a full-size Chevrolet. It offered fantastic, room, and also it had a big trunk, just like the Bonneville, where you could fit a surfboard in there, and it just really was a fantastic piece. And this was a great representation of a great car of a bygone era. Well, as I mentioned, with promos, that as they faded, the manufacturers decided, they faded because manufacturers decided not to offer them as freebies. There was still a large group of people that really loved going down to the dealerships and collecting these. And, they were just very disappointed. And of course, the manufacturers like MPC and a few of the others out there that wanted to keep making these, they realized that there was a market for them. So what they did do is they continued to make the vehicles, but they would offer them for sale at the dealership sales department, at the parts department of these dealerships. So in other words, if it was a Chevrolet dealership, they would offer some of these promos. You could go down to the parts department and purchase a promo of a Corvette or some of the other Chevrolets, and it wouldn't be a lot of money, but still you'd have to pay for it, but you still got a promo, and this kept the customers happy. And some of these promos were also available at hobby stores. But this is an example of a promo that was available at Chevrolet dealerships. And this is a really, really interesting piece, and it's actually a really, really hard piece to come by. And this is a promo that, especially in the kit, that you really aren't going to see very often. In fact, if you try to find the combo kit, which was a special promo kit that had this, which is the 1996 Chevrolet Tahoe, and it said 1996 Truck of the Year, and that was an award Motor Trend gave to this, and it was a yearly award. And in 1996, Motor Trend magazine gave it to this Chevrolet Tahoe. The year before, it gave the same award to a 1995 Chevrolet Blazer. And so Chevrolet, to kind of commemorate that, right there back in the 96 time frame, it actually offered this promo and a 1995 Blazer, and it had the two in a kit. And this is the kit that I was mentioning. It's so hard to find. I mean, you could look on eBay, and I haven't seen one in years. And you look and you can't find them, but it's just kind of an interesting piece. And of course, they also sold the promos separate. Most of them were sold separate separately. And with this promo, what you'll notice is that you can kind of see the progression of promos, where you have much more detail. Like this one has these nice black mirrors that believe it or not, are just exactly like the ones that were found on the Tahoe you could buy at the dealership. And then you could of course see that it's got the black trim around the windows, around the rear tailgate glass, black door handles, which included the cargo door handle. Also, the side doors had the black door handles. It even had the black trim on the side, where these were put in place to protect the doors against parking lot nicks and dings from other doors. It even has the 1500 logo and the Chevrolet symbol. I mean, just fantastic detail. The grille is painted in black, just like the real vehicle. It's got the right color turning lamps, turning indicators, just really, really nice. And even what's also really fantastic details, even the tail lamps have included in them the white backup lights. But these are really nice. And also, if you look very carefully, you'll notice that it says 1996. That's one thing about promos, is generally they'll put where normally the license plate will go, and it's generally in the back. They will put in what year the promo is supposed to be, the car is supposed to be a representation of. So yeah, this is just a really neat car. I mean, SUV. It's kind of a rare find, and it shows you what was offered to individuals who were willing to pay for a promo, and a lot of people bought these back in the day. And then we arrive at the last example that I've got here, which is an interesting hybrid, because this is a 1972 GTO. And of course, I introduced you to the, excuse me, this is not a 1972, this is a 1971. The 72 and the 71 actually have the same exact body style, so, but if you do look here, you can't see where it says 1971, so it is a 71. But yeah, this is a very, very interesting promo. This is generally, and this kind of illustrates a point that I want to bring up, is if you look at these two vehicles, you'll notice right here that if you check out these vehicles, they're very similar. They have the same midsection in terms of the center part of their body of the vehicle. You know, they got the same creases on the quarter panels. So, you know, they're pretty much identical in that area. However, if you look very carefully to the front end, I mean, they're just 1 year apart, but you can kind of tell that there's differences between the two. The one on the right, of course, is the 70. The one on the left is the 71. The 71, the quad headlamps are a little bit closer. The grille is slightly different on the 71, and it also is a larger grille in which it's kind of a little bit, just slightly more aggressive in appearance. And if you look at the hood scoops, you can see the hood scoops are much larger with the 71. And this is exactly what happened back in the era where, unlike today, where generally you come out with a body style or a new vehicle, the styling stays around for a while. And some of the styling will stay unchanged on certain cars for up to 5, 6, even sometimes 7 or 8 years. One of the things about vehicles of this era, you know, especially the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and even the 80s stuff, is that people back then would go in and buy a new vehicle, and they would keep it for, you know, they would keep it for a year or two, and you know, sometimes up to 3 years, and generally by 3 years they were trading it in on something new, and that was exactly what these promos were geared towards, because the repeat buyers, they'd show them the new body style, and of course with the slight, so where the automakers would sometimes make changes was generally in some of the details, especially the front end and especially in the rear tail lamp design. They would change that from year to year, and what that did is it kind of by changing it, it kind of helped them to kind of sell to people who might have bought from them only just a few short years, you know, 2 or 3 years before. So, you know, if you take the general body style, this body style in a GTO was pretty much the same from 1968 to 72. But, you know, they changed things like the quarter panels here on the side were the same, were a different design in 68 and 69, and then they went to the creases in 70 to 72, and then of course each of the there was different types of designs and different changes in parking lamps or headlamps from 68 to 72, and from the 71 and 72 generally it was kind of untouched, and they didn't do that, and that was really the reason is they were expecting to come out with the new GM A body in 72, but it got delayed till 73. But nevertheless, you know, this is a really nice promo. This is a promo that was not available at the Pontiac dealerships. This was one that was only available in hobby stores. And there were quite a few of these 71 GTOs that were available at dealerships, but not this color. This color was only available at hobby stores and toy stores, and it was a special piece that was very limited production. It's this beautiful color. You probably have noticed the beautiful orange color. Pontiac didn't call it orange. They called it carousel red, and the reason why they called it carousel red is kind of a orangey, reddish orange. But it's just a beautiful color. And in my opinion, I think this is one of the most beautiful colors that Pontiac had ever come out with. And it was one that they offered on different performance cars only for a few select years. And the first, the most famous appearance of it was the first 69 GTO. Judge had carousel red, and the first groupings of GTO Judges that came off the line in '69 were all carousel red, and then they switched over to a couple of different colors before the model year ran out. But with this color, unfortunately, is only offered for a few years, and 2 of the years it was offered, nobody knew it really was offered. I mean, Pontiac really didn't advertise it. It was one of those where you had to almost know somebody down at the dealership who was in the know. There was a salesman who was on top of things, that you could find out that it was available in 1976 on the Trans Am and also on the Firebird Formula, and it was available in 1980 also on the Firebird lineup, and especially the Trans Am. And just a beautiful color, and it's one that unfortunately Pontiac never capitalized on the color. I mean, could you imagine, an 80s? We're talking a 3rd generation Trans Am or a 4th generation Trans Am in this color. We're talking it would have been a really nice looking car. Or if they had taken Grand Prix and offered it in this color, or what they did in 1986 with the Pontiac 2+2, which was the special edition Grand Prix that was made to be able to put aero panels, qualify them for NASCAR racing. Can you imagine if they offered that 2+2 coupe with this color? It would have been a beautiful car. But yeah, this was only available at hobby stores, but it's just really a beautiful piece. It's very well put together. Of course, it's got the Rally 2 wheels, Pontiac Rally 2 wheels. So just really a fantastic piece. And it's even got you can see it's got a chrome shifter and 4-speed automatic, 4-speed manual shifter. That was what they used to commonly refer to back in the day when the shifter was in the console. It was a 4 on the floor, and when it was a 4-speed on the floor. But in this case, it's actually in the console, but since it was still on the floor, it was considered 4 on the floor. Beautiful, beautiful promo. With these promos, one of the things to bear in mind is these are collectible. And these are not toys. These are not to be played. These are not something that you would buy and have your children play with them, like way back when, when these were new. These are definitely collectibles, or like what has been commonly popular in sort of scale model circles, the die-cast cars in 1/18 or 1/24 scale. These promos generally were made in 1/24 and 1/25 scale. That's generally the scale that they were all made in. When I was mentioning earlier with the GTO promo, I mentioned that you have just generally a shell. When you had with the model kits, MPC that made this also made model kits, and they based the model kits on, where this was based on an MPC scale model kit. And those were the box model kits. They had the pieces. Generally, kids bought them. They put them together, and you had a pop-up hood, and you had the engine inside. There was no engine inside any of the promos, with the exception of a 1963 Impala SS That particular year, they offered the pop-up hood. That's a very, very rare promo, and that's a promo that if you do find that you may and you really want to collect these things, and if you find it for a reasonable price, you definitely want to pick up that promo. But with this, you didn't have, the pop-up hood or anything like that. But interesting to look at these promos is all of these were colored, as I was using the example of the cardinal red, and then of course the carousel red, which these were all colors that were available with the real deal if you bought them at the dealership, the real car. These were painted exactly in the same hue, but it's got a nice shine and it looks really nice, and that's one of the things that you really want to find. And all these examples right here are cars that don't have any scratches. That the chrome is in perfect shape, and these cars have all been well preserved. And generally, if you want to collect these and you want to buy these, as the economy is kind of a little bit unstable, sometimes we want to put our money in certain things that may be able to yield pretty good returns. And of course, if you like the car hobby and you like these promos, it's probably a good investment. These things have gone up over the years, and they've provided good investment opportunities for those who have held on to them. It's not something that generally you want to buy and flip it 3 months later. But if you want to buy something like this and you hold on to it for like 5 to 10 years, like you would a Rolex watch, generally you're gonna generally make more money. You're gonna sell it for more money than you paid for it. So what you want to do is you want to buy these for as low as you possibly can, and then you want to hold on to them. And then if you want to sell them, you definitely you want to make sure that you hold on to them for a little while. But generally, you'll make more money than you paid for them. So they provide a pretty good investment opportunity. And another factor is they provide a fantastic opportunity for individuals who are kind of car nuts. I mean, I'm a car nut myself, and we all have limited resources by and large, except if we're internet billionaires or trust fund babies. But generally, we all have limited resources, and we can't buy what we really want. Or, a lot of us would go out and buy 10 or 15 of our favorite classic cars. But with the promos, what you have with the opportunity is you have the opportunity to buy something, a scale model of which has value, of something that you really like. Like me, I really like the 71 GTO. It's one of my favorite, favorite body designs of the GTO. So, with having a promo like this, it affords the opportunity for somebody who's a GTO fanatic to say, hey, I've got this neat little piece, and you take it and you display it on a desk, or you put it somewhere in which people have an opportunity to be able to view it, and especially you viewing it, if you really like this hobby, it kind of takes away some of the urge to go out and buy all these classic cars. These are definitely, if you're going to start dumping your money, these are a lot cheaper than buying the real thing. I mean, we're looking at something like this, a few $100s, compared to if you were to find this in mint condition, you're talking anything from $45,000 to even $75,000, and that's a lot of money. And of course, with the real thing, you've got to change the oil, you have to maintain the car, keep it in good running order. And with these, all you have to do is just kind of make sure that you don't scratch it. You keep it displayed, and you maintain and take care of it, which really doesn't require any money, capital outlay, except for display cases. And with these, you definitely want to get a dust-free display case. And they have many different display cases. If you have just one promo, you can get a single one. Or if you have just a few promos, getting the single glass dust-free cases, that's a good way to go. But if you end up buying a bunch of promos, then you'll definitely want to get a nice display case with multiple cubby holes, and want to make sure, of course, it's dust free. And they do have cases that you can even mount on the wall, which are beautiful display cases that have a mirrored background. And you can some of those cases you can put up to 50 promos in them. So they're just very, very, very nice display cases. But you definitely want to keep it dust free, because you take a nice promo like this and you leave it out for a while and you get dust on the outside. You can kind of very carefully clean it, but what happens is you get the dust on the inside part of the windshield, back around there, and then you find yourself with a Q-tip very carefully cleaning it out, and it can get to be tedious. So it's much better for maintenance, and of course the nice shine is going to last a lot longer if you don't let dust accumulate on them. So yeah, it's very important to take care of them. But getting back to the collectability, with these, you really want to buy what you like. I know there's certain holy grail that are very much pieces that have great collectability, and that's nice to go and collect those. But the fun of the hobby is actually collecting what you really, really like. As an example, if you happen to be a GTO fanatic and you collect the GTOs, but you happen to see that there's a 1969 Mustang, and there is a 1969 red and 1969 Mach 1 Mustang, which is a beautiful piece, since it wasn't produced in high numbers, and of course there's a tremendous amount of desirability there's such a low supply of them. They're going for such high prices. I've seen them recently go for close to $2,000 for a 1969 Mustang Mach 1 in that red color. So you can sit there and say, well, I'd like to get that because it's going to be worth a lot of money, but you're not a Mustang fan. You want to buy what you really like. But if you do like Mustangs, hey, and you run across that, and then you kind of want to find good buys. And on the flip side of the coin, just don't buy something because it's a good buy. Unless, of course, it's such a good buy that you know that you can go and purchase it and then flip it for a quick, quick profit. As I mentioned, most of the time you can't really do that. But, say, for instance, you're going around to a garage sale and somebody's selling one of these, and, they have them, and they're selling it for $20. I mean, I've seen deals like that where you're at a flea market, or you're at a garage sale, or you're somewhere at a car collector's show, or a toy show, and you see something, and the person's selling it, and it's way under its value, and all they want is $20 for it, or $50. Yeah, then you got a good deal. You can buy it and then flip it, sell it on a place like eBay. And generally, what you want to do too is don't just jump into the hobby. That's the worst thing you can do, because what happens is sometimes when you jump into a hobby and you get kind of immersed in it, because you sit there and say, ooh, this is something new. I really like cars, and I really like collecting these cars. And what happens is sometimes we get involved where we get into a frenzy where we say, oh, gee, and we start buying, all the stuff that we like. And then you realize, oh my goodness, I paid way too much for what I bought. And then there's kind of buyer's remorse about that. So, kind of just take it slow. If you want to get into the promo collector market, buy one, just try buying one. And then maybe buy a second one, a third one, and then, kind of take it from that. And if you decide, well, gee, this isn't my cup of tea, I've bought it and I've kept it for a few years, go ahead and sell it. And you more than likely, as I mentioned, you're probably going to make some money off of them. And also another bit of advice I can give you related to these and in purchasing these promos is be sure to check some of the auction sites, such as eBay, or some of the other sites in which you can look at some of the completed items that have sold, or items that have come across the auction block. And if you notice that generally there's a trend where in the last few months, when looking at those completed sales, that the promos you're interested in might, as an example, be between $140 and $160. That gives you kind of an idea what you're going to be paying. And then that way, if you happen to stumble across a promo that's much more expensive than what you're seeing them go across the auction block and successfully sold for, then you know that you're that it's too much money and you're not going to bid on it. So generally, that's another kind of safety mechanism by looking at those completed items, especially the sale items, to gauge how much a promo is really worth. And in closing, this is a very interesting hobby. This is one that, there's different levels of it, as I mentioned. You can just maybe want to purchase one. If you, like, for instance, you own a 74 Firebird formula and you want to have a promo of the car that you own, then, there's some people that go out and buy that. And then, of course, there's the people that buy tons of promos, and then there's people that just buy a certain type of make or a model, and they just buy multiple ones of that make or model. But nevertheless, I mean, this is a throwback to an era in which will never come back again. This was a neat little area of automotive history where dealers offered promos for free, and it's never going to return. As the years progress, more and more of these disappear from the supply, so that's another factor in why they're going to be worth more money in the end run. But it's an interesting hobby, and if you're interested in it, have at it. Enjoy it, and then, of course, if you get tired of it and you say, I've had enough of this, then you can always sell them, and I think you'll more than likely end up on the profitable side of the coin when you go to sell your promos, if you keep them for a while. And I want to thank you for watching this video. I hope I answered all your questions, and I hope I presented a good overview of all the different types of promos over the years. And if you have any questions or you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below. And of course, please visit our site, OldCarMemories.com. It's a site devoted to those old classic cars from yesteryear, and part of that is we showcase classic cars, muscle cars, old trucks, and even SUVs. And also we review, and also, from time to time, even talk about and showcase those new cars that are worthy of mention. So definitely stop by OldCarMemories.com. Definitely watch some more of our videos, and thank you so much for your support, and hope you all have a great day.